I am one of the chairs this year for the General Assembly at Monk. I first want to start off by saying I'm so excited to meet you all and to hear the great ideas that you guys have come up with. So welcome to your background guide update. You guys were given two topics for the General Assembly, the first being labor standards and the second being happiness. So this update is going to focus on happiness. The first clip I have to show you guys is an explanation of Bhutan's adoption of gross national happiness. And Bhutan's a country that we had originally mentioned in your background guide, so I hope you enjoy.
The Simple Show explains gross national happiness. This is the fourth Dragon King of Bhutan, a beautiful country at the eastern end of the Himalayas. He became king at the age of 17 in 1972. It was then when he had to decide what should be the philosophy behind his reign. He looked at other countries and noticed in most of them the government and the people strive for economical wealth. And those few who achieve this goal usually live a comfortable life. But on the downside, many other people live in misery, poverty, or social isolation. Also, in the ruthless hunt for money, huge parts of the environment are often destroyed. This couldn't be the right path for Bhutan. The concept of gross national happiness was born. The primary idea of GNH is that every human being aspires for happiness, and a country's development should also be measured in its citizens' happiness. The fourth Dragon King's challenge, therefore, was figuring out how to balance economic development with the emotional and spiritual well-being of his people. Although economical growth can't be the only goal, a flourishing economy gives the government the funds needed to provide a working health and educational system, as well as certain living standards. Because being healthy, having opportunities for the future, and knowing that security, a steady income, housing, or well-balanced time use are guaranteed is crucial for people to be happy. But furthermore, people get a lot of positive energy from being with others and sharing interests. Participating in cultural life and to hold up local traditions and cultural heritage lead to a stronger community feeling. Healthy family relationships, advocating community activities, and religious aspects are factors for achieving happiness. It gives the Bhutanese people a strong sense of values and identity. The fourth Dragon King reigned 34 years, basing his decisions on all factors of gross national happiness, asking himself, what makes Bhutan's people happy? And the fourth Dragon King lived by example, leading a very simple life. In fact, he believed so strongly in the concept of GNH, he even decided to hand over sovereignty to the people. In 2006, he retired as king at the age of 52 and changed the course of history. 2 years later, in 2008, Bhutan elected its first representative parliament. Since then, the idea of gross national happiness has taken quite some momentum outside of Bhutan, with other countries and people around the world thinking about adopting the GNH approach to strive for development with values and to make the world a happier place.
So the next clip that I have for you guys is two specialists, one on the side of happiness and the other on the side of the financial world, debating whether or not gross national happiness is a valid way to judge a country's success. And they both make valid points, so make sure to take in what they're saying and see if it can be applied to the nation that you guys are representing.
Well, joining us now, Dr. Mark Williamson, who's the Director of Action for Happiness, an organisation which promotes a happier society, and Dr. Steve Davis is alongside him from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Very good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Mark, you've looked at the research. Who's happiest? The richest?
Well, it's very interesting. I think the starting point for all of this is that what makes for a happy life, a good life, is, I think, more about more than just our income, and that's what this report really backs up. And I think we we should acknowledge that there's a huge link between our wealth and our happiness, but actually above a certain standard of living, many more things are much more important. Our relationships, the communities we live in, the feelings about the work that we do, and so on. So I think this report shows that whilst GDP matters, whilst our wealth matters, actually there's much more to what matters to us in life than just that. And in fact, actually what we should be doing is encouraging our leaders, our policymakers, to take a broader definition of progress, not just growing the economy, but thinking about what makes for the best human happiness and well-being overall in life.
Steve, is there any merit to this exercise at all? Can one really measure happiness accurately?
Well, there are big problems, actually. One of the remarkable features about these kind of research is that the statistic for life satisfaction, as they call it, is remarkably stable. It's about 7 out of 10. No matter what's going on in the world, it doesn't it doesn't correlate really with anything. And that does mean that it's in some ways not really that useful as a guide to policy. And I do think it's quite dangerous actually to say that therefore we should ignore things like GDP, because there is also, as Mark says, quite strong evidence that generally speaking people do tend to be happier, more content with their life when they have more resources at their disposal, when they're more in control of their lives, and money's obviously crucial for that. Yeah,
I mean, if life satisfaction is staying stable, does it mean that the UK is coping with the cuts and what's happening economically?
Well, I mean, I think Steve's making a good point, which is if you look over the last 60 years in the UK, as our economy has grown hugely, our well-being hasn't gone up in step, and which raises lots of interesting questions about what our priorities should be. But there are other countries that have not only higher well-being right now, but also that have seen that the sort of levels of life satisfaction go up. So it is possible to be happier, to have a better quality of life.
So does that mean, which is the happiest country, and what are they doing that's making them happy?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, often countries like Denmark and Northern European countries often come up very high in some of these surveys. It's very difficult to draw exact comparisons about why countries are happier than others, but certainly freedom and autonomy matters, strong sort of sense of community, the feeling that there's a kind of a sense of equality, that people feel as though that others care about them. There's a sort of sense of mutual concern. These are all factors that some of these Northern European countries have, perhaps arguably better than the UK does. But I mean, it's a complicated picture.
Is there a problem with the measurement exercise in itself? Because it is, in effect, a box-ticking exercise, isn't it? Well,
yes, there is a problem. The real problem essentially is that you're asked to rate your satisfaction or happiness on a scale of, well, 1 to 3 in these cases, sometimes 1 to 5. What that means is that in order for a country as a whole to move up, an enormous number of people have to go from 2 to 3 or from 3 to 4 or 5 in a longer scale. And that's extremely difficult. And that means that it's not really useful as a guide to public policy, I would say. Now, certainly not at the national level, at the local level, the level of the individual workplace or the very small district, we do actually have quite good evidence as to what makes people feel better. But it seems to me that it's not very useful as a guide for national governance.
See, because Mark, if a sense of community is one of the things that makes people happy, well, you can't legislate for that at a government level, can you? Can't say, well, you must have happy little groups.
Well, it's interesting. There are lots of things that government can't do, and there's much more to happiness than just government policy. But actually, I should clarify that those surveys actually measure from 0 to 10, not 1 to 3. Right, yeah. But actually, let's take a practical example. So something like the closure of a post office or turning a library or community facility into housing development. These are decisions that policymakers make all the time at a local level, at a national level, and they're normally making those decisions based on the economic concerns. Will it create jobs? What does it do for the economy? But we all know instinctively there's much more to what matters to us than just the financial impact. A post office, for example, brings that social cohesion, that community, some of that trust and connection that's so vital.
But Steve, should that form part of the decision if, on an economic basis, it might make other people unhappy?
Well, that's a kind of decision that really needs to be made, I think, at the very local level, the individual level, the level of the individual firm, maybe very, very local government. And what I don't think we should do under any circumstances is have yet another excuse for national politicians to start interfering with what are really very private aspects of our life. Right. It should provide a framework within which people can pursue their own happiness and do so at a very personal local level, I think.
I have to leave there. Steve, Mark, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
So I hope this background guide update was helpful for you guys and provided you with some really good food for thought. And again, I really look forward to seeing you guys. I can't wait for me, Monk. See you soon.